Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello, everybody. How is it going today? Happy Thursday. Hope you've been having a wonderful week so far. I am back with more feel-good, positive stories to share with you. Throw away those negative news headlines because I've got all good, feel-good news for you, okay? So I hope this episode uplifts your Thursday or whichever day you are listening to this. I've got lots of good stories, so I'm just going to jump right into it. So the first story I want to share with you today is about Qatar Airways and what they are doing to honor World Teachers Day. This airline is giving away 21,000 free tickets to teachers. How cool is that? So since it is World Teachers Day, it was just a few days ago, they are setting this up for the next few days. I believe you can still apply if you are a teacher. They wanted to give away 21,000 complimentary tickets to teachers just to thank them for their vital work in educating young people worldwide during the challenges that were brought by, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. So this giveaway opened just a few days ago, and it runs for the next few days here. And teaching professionals can register for their exclusive offer at QatarAirways.com. You just submit a form to receive a promotion code, and it's offered on a first come, first serve basis. So you have to, I guess, beat out, the 21,000 people. So teaching professionals from over 75 countries in which Qatar Airways currently operates are eligible for the tickets. Each country will receive a daily allocation of tickets staggered over the 3-day campaign, and then they'll be released each day around 4 a.m. So teachers that successfully register will receive the one economy class round trip ticket to anywhere on Qatar Airways' current network of more than 90 destinations worldwide, which is so cool. They will also receive a voucher for 50% off one future round trip ticket that they can use for themselves, a family member, or a friend. And both tickets are valid for travel up to the 30th of September of 2021. And teachers who receive tickets will benefit from the airline's leading flexible booking policies as well. So they can all rest assured that the carrier has implemented the most advanced safety and hygiene measures on board its aircraft. So there's full PPE suits for cabin crew and complimentary protective kits and face shields for passengers. So go let a teacher know how much you appreciate their efforts. You can just share these giveaway details with them and head over to QatarAirways.com to register if you are a teacher, or register for somebody else that you believe deserves this trip. So cool. Now, the next thing I want to share with you is the 10 healthiest communities for well-being in America. I saw this article and I thought it was pretty neat. So it was the third annual healthiest communities rankings came out just this past month, and it rated all the major factors contributing to physical and mental health of locations across America. So Los Alamos County, New Mexico, turned out to be the healthiest community in the United States. This is all according to the extensive research that was underwritten by the Atita Foundation with research by U.S. News and World Report. They examined nearly 3,000 locations across the country on dozens of factors that shape community health and well-being. So Los Alamos received a perfect score for measurements including drinking water quality, affordable housing availability, park access, and number of college-educated citizens. Colorado grabbed 6 of the top 10 spots, which is just crazy. So 3 counties in Colorado ranked in the top 5. So Douglas County was 2nd, Broomfield County was 4th, Routt County was 5th. Falls Church, Virginia was ranked 3rd most healthy, and they all scored above the national average in at least 8 of the 10 categories. So that's education, equity, economy, population health, housing, food and nutrition, public safety infrastructure, environment, and community vitality. So the project serves as a tool to inform the residents and the community health leaders and elected officials about policies and best practices for better health outcomes by assessing which communities offer their citizens the greatest opportunity to live a productive and healthy life. So the analysis of 84 metrics of well-being seemed to be parallel with how well a county was doing during the COVID-19 pandemic as well. So the number 1 ranked community, Los Alamos County, has just seen 124 cases per 1,000 residents by late August, compared with a national average more than 10 times that rate. So based on the information from sources such as the U.S. Centers of Disease Control and Prevention and the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, the U.S. Census Bureau, and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, all this data came from a period predating the pandemic. So the 10 healthiest communities overall: Los Alamos County, New Mexico; Douglas County, Colorado; Falls Church, Virginia; Broomfield County, Colorado; Routt County, Colorado; Loudoun County, Virginia; Pitkin County, Colorado; Carver County, Minnesota; Summit County, Colorado; and San Miguel County, Colorado. And then the top 5 communities for access to health care was Olmsted County, Minnesota; Suffolk County, Massachusetts; Johnson County, Iowa; Perry County, Kentucky; and District of Columbia. Honolulu County, Hawaii actually ranked number 1 for the mental health category, which assessed deaths from suicide, alcohol, or drugs, and the rate of depression among Medicare beneficiaries, and the number of poor mental health days per month. So the top 5 communities for mental health were Honolulu County, Hawaii; Tripp County, South Dakota; Bambita County, North Dakota; Sutton County, Texas; and Hartley County, Texas. There you have it. It's a pretty cool study that they did to find out the healthiest communities in the United States. I thought it was pretty unique. So it was another record-setting organ donation year in the U.S. in 2019, and now the transplant rate in 2020 stays very strong as well. So the new organ donation records were set in 2019 for the 10th consecutive year in the United States. Healthcare teams across the country performed nearly 40,000 transplants from both deceased and living organ donors. So this marks an 8.7 increase over 2018, and one of the big drivers remains the Department of Motor Vehicles. So the DMV is the primary source for state donor registration by providing people the opportunity to easily register to be a donor and have their intentions indicated on their driver's license. So the unprecedented growth in organ donation is growth that has made the U.S. donation system the world's leader in life-saving organ transplant rate. And so that was Tom Moen. He is the Chief Executive Officer of One Legacy, the not-for-profit organization serving 7 Southern California counties. So he called California the nation's largest registry, which has grown to 16.8 million registered donors and has helped grow U.S. registered donors to 156 million. So the 10 years of growth in organ donation has, for the first time ever, reduced the national transplant wait list from more than 120,000 to under 109,000, which is pretty cool. So during the pandemic, transplants are still saving lives. According to the United Network for Organ Sharing, the donations plummeted at the outset of the pandemic, but by May, transplants nationwide began to increase again, and numbers reached close to pre-pandemic levels about in June. So their data records every organ transplant in the US shows the rate is steady and in line with 2019. So that is good news. And you can help save a life by registering to be an organ donor at the National Donate Life Registry website, which just ensures your donor registration travels with you no matter where you live or move across the United States. So if you want to sign up to be an organ donor, head to the National Donate Life Registry to sign up. Now it is time for a little bit of a break, but when we get back, I have lots more feel-good stories to share with you, including a positive story about the crazy wildfires that have been happening. I know that sounds hard that I have a positive story about it, but I do. There's a positive twist to everything. Also a really interesting story about if you are scared of facing eviction, there is some good news, and I have a place where you can find help in the United States as well. So lots more information to share with you, lots more feel-good stories, so don't go anywhere. I will be right back.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast. Okay, I am back sharing more positive feel-good stories with you, and I do have a positive story about the wildfires. I know the wildfires are bad for people, but they can be good for the environment. So since there has been so much misery being felt in the communities surrounding the West Coast wildfires, there was some research done to find some silver linings and wondering, if these blazes might actually be beneficial to the environment. So the non-profit organization called Earth Talk had some of these answers. So forest fire does clear away the tinder-like overgrown understory that has resulted from years of forest management that avoided fire at all cost. And hundreds of years ago, many of the forests now on fire in California, Oregon, and Washington had fewer yet larger and healthier trees. But these days, partly thanks to fire suppression, as well as other factors, forests are more crowded today with smaller, less healthy trees. So it's also harder for those remaining mature, established trees to compete for the nutrients and space with all the undergrowth that's built up in recent decades. So in these situations, small manageable fires, or prescribed burns, they call them, can not only be beneficial, but can help prevent larger fires down the road by clearing the weaker, smaller trees. And another benefit of the wildfire is actually clearing of the overgrown underbush to make room for new grasses, herbs, and some shrubs that provide food and habitat for many wildlife species. And the removal of thick stands of shrubs increases the water supply for the remaining larger plants and trees, and also streams and rivers to swell, so benefiting ever-thirsty native flora and fauna. So another benefit of the fire is that it kills off fungi, bacteria, viruses, and insects that can decimate tree and plant communities and entire forest ecosystems. So according to the California's statewide wildfire management agencies, more trees die from insect infestation and disease than from wildfire, and some fire actually helps keep forests devoid of such pests and healthier overall than without the fire. So they point out that the vegetation burned by wildfire provides a rich source of nutrients that nourish surviving trees and soil. And a periodic fire can be an important way to keep certain ecosystems in balance. And many trees have evolved with fire, and some even require it for seed germination. And a few few species even sport leaves covered with flammable resins. So they encourage fires that help seed the next generation. National Geographic says that surprisingly, wildfire casualties tend to be low during wildfire events, as animals, especially those native to the areas on fire and involved to respond to the threat, either burrow in the ground or they flee to safer areas instinctively. But invasive plants and animals may not fare as well, given lack of genetic imprinting to be on alert for the threat. So there is some positive information about the wildfires. I know I mentioned a few weeks ago about the story of how these wildfires actually helped some of the woodpeckers come back, some endangered species. So that's pretty cool as well. We can always find a silver lining to everything. If you want to find out more information, you go to earthtalk.com and that you can donate there. You can ask questions. You can do lots of different things. So head over to earthtalk.com if you want to find out some more information about the wildfires. Now, my next story for you is if you or someone that you know is facing eviction, there is some good news and there are some ways that you can find some help in the United States. So millions of Americans right now are being impacted, of course, by the pandemic and the economic downturn, right? So a lot of people are facing eviction at this time. So to ease the strain, the Trump administration issued an effective order at the beginning of September that bans evictions due to non-payment through to the end of the year. And the order applies to individuals who have personal income less than $99,000 a year, or those who did not need to pay income tax in 2019, or those who received a stimulus check and are unable to pay rent due to income loss or extraordinary out-of-the-pocket medical expenses. So to be eligible for the eviction protection, you would be required to submit to the landlord or the property manager some declaration attesting under oath to your inability to pay, but there may be other hurdles too that some renters are going to have to face if you cannot pay rent this year. So if you do need help or advice, there are some groups and lawyers that are here to assist you. So tenants who need help understanding the new kind of guidelines of all this and filling out your declaration form, or who have questions about eligibility, you can contact the COVID-19 Eviction Defense Project. And this provides free legal aid to tenants by pairing volunteer attorneys with tenants that are facing the eviction and other housing issues that are related to the COVID-19 hardship. So Zach Newman, the co-founder and executive director of the nonprofit that's based in Colorado, he says the national moratorium on evictions, when implemented, is a first step that protects millions of Americans from becoming homeless through the December holidays. And Wells Fargo is, as part of the $175 million commitment to COVID relief, is donating $5.4 million in grants to 15 legal assistance organizations that are working to keep people housed through the pro bono services and advocacy efforts for renters. So it is a first of its kind initiative from the Wells Fargo Foundation, but the grants will enable a lot of organizations to provide more free or low-cost legal counseling and attorney representation. There is a giant list from places all over the United States. So head on over to wellsfargofoundation.com and you can see the list of all of these communities and areas that will be receiving some grants to help people out. Now, my next story for you is about how the new developments in clean energy and carbon capture are making real progress in the climate crisis. I feel like almost every single episode I've been sharing at least one story that is a positive story about climate crisis from communities, cities, towns all over our world, what they are doing to try to combat this climate crisis. So the mainstream media, is covering climate crisis a lot more than they used to. But the media seems to report dramatically more on the negative, focusing on the new extremes in our regional temperatures and the dramatic new rainfall patterns, forest fires, floods, right? Those are all those headlines, except I am always here to share these positive headlines about the climate crisis. So it is definitely crucial to, scope out those challenges, to see what's going on in our world, see where we need to, work harder, maybe do a little bit more in certain communities, but there are good things happening. So take solar energy, for example. There's been many casual news readers that may not know that scientists and engineers have improved solar energy technology so much that new cells are now cheaper than analysts could have ever anticipated in the early years. They are now more affordable for developing communities than building new fossil fuel plants, even while simultaneously being more efficient, more powerful, and longer lasting. New solar cells can also now be transparent with functional integration for home windows in skyscrapers, greenhouse rooftops, or even solar canopies lining highway roads. There's advanced new solar tech can even accomplish additional things for homeowners, like one new line of panels that gather moisture from the air to generate clean drinking water, while also providing off-the-grid energy that's produced by the Arizona-based Zero Mass Waters source technology. I did talk all about that on one of the recent episodes. It is such a cool new technology. If you want to find out more information, head on over to thesource.co and you will find kind of what exactly this technology means and what it is doing for our environment, because it has so many different benefits. All right, well, it is time for another break, but don't go anywhere. When we get back, I have a really cool story about 27 sealed coffins that were just discovered in an ancient cemetery in Egypt. They were buried over 2,500 years ago, so it's a pretty cool story. You're not going to want to miss it. I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the last stretch of America's Still Beautiful episode today. I'm going to just jam-pack as many more feel-good stories as I can into our time here. So the next story I want to share with you is about the 27 sealed coffins that were just discovered in Egypt. They were discovered in an ancient cemetery and they were buried over 2,500 years ago. So the initial analysis shows that these caskets are thought to be more than 2,500 years old, and they have not been opened since they were buried. How cool is that? Like, they're kind of freaky looking. I know, like, I've seen it all in movies and stuff, but seeing these pictures, I find this stuff kind of freaky. It's so cool, but it's freaky. So, the finds were discovered deep in burial shafts of Saqqara. So, for more than 3,000 years, there has been Egyptians living in the ancient capital of Memphis that were buried there dead. So, the archaeologists are currently working to determine the origins of these caskets, and there are more details that are going to be coming soon. They're currently taking place at the vast burial ground and the UNESCO World Heritage Site, so you can expect a lot more unveilings to be announced really soon. You can actually watch the ministry's video of the unearthing. If you head on over to Khalid El Ani's Twitter profile, there's a little bit of a blurb and a video on it, and you can see the ministry's video of the unearthing. It is a pretty cool video. So I guess stay tuned. I'm sure I'm going to be having more stories stories talking about exactly what they are going to be unveiling a little bit later. Now, my next story is about a really cool dad who cycled 200 miles from Scotland to England for charity, and he did this while riding his 8-year-old daughter's pink bike. Okay, so he was determined to cycle 200 miles while riding his daughter's tiny little pink bike. So over 6 days, his name is Wesley Hamnet, and he pedaled from Glasgow, Scotland to Manchester, England on a $26 bike with 12-inch wheels. Yes, 200 miles. So he's a dad of 2, and he wanted to raise funds for various charities and hospitals, which were really close to his heart after he lost his granddad to cancer last year. So he originally planned to cycle over 1,200 miles from Russia to his home in Lancashire, but due to the pandemic, he was, of course, kind of forced to figure out a different route or a different idea. So he decided that he would cycle from Glasgow to Manchester while riding this very comically small pink bike that his 2 young daughters learned to ride. So after his cycle, it included a 6-hour-long stretch and 8 busted tires. He managed to drag the 12-inch wheels to his home near Manchester. This was just at the end of September. He says, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it. Hell, I wasn't sure if the bike was going to make it all the way. I felt like I was going to die during certain stretches, but it was all worth it. So he went through this grueling pain. He reached peaks as high of 1,300 feet at the Shap Summit in Cumbria, England, which he says, with some understatement, the bike was not built for. But he says, I kept pushing because anytime there's an uphill climb, there must be a downhill climb. I felt like a little kid going down. I couldn't stop if I tried. It was scary, but amazingly fun. He says, we've gotten so much incredible support on this journey, and none of it would have been possible without the fun pink bike. So he is fundraising for the Macmillan Cancer Support, the Christie Charitable Fund, British Heart Foundation, and the Hospital MFT charity. He raised just over $10,000 so far, but he still hopes to make the trek from Russia to Manchester next spring when things open up a little bit more. He's only 37 years old, but he says, I want to thank everyone who has donated. They've been absolutely amazing. I feel so overwhelmed, but it's been a real blessing. So if you'd like to go see this fundraiser, there is a GoFundMe page that you can head on over to. So you can search up the Wesley Hamnet GoFundMe page. There's a picture of him and his 2 cute little daughters, and he's been raising quite a bit of money. So if you feel like you'd like to go donate, definitely head over to that GoFundMe page. There's also a video that talks a little bit more about his journey and his fundraising and the little pink bike. You can search up a dad that cycled more than 200 miles for charity, and you will pop up on this video. It is a pretty fun little video to watch. Now, my next story for you is a positive new invention or discovery, I guess. Some scientists have created a super enzyme that eats plastic bottles 6 times faster than previous enzymes. So enzymes that are produced in the stomachs of certain bacteria that were found during several high-profile discoveries have now been combined with English scientists to create this super enzyme that they're calling it. So it's reducing the time it takes for these chemicals to break down plastic from weeks into hours. So the new discovery would further triple this speed at which this plastic polymers are undone, and providing a serious opportunity to win the fight against plastic pollution in the next few decades, as well as opening the door for scientists to create more synthetic enzymes targeted for specific kinds of plastics. So the field of organic enzymatic plastic recycling, this blew up during the second half of the 2010s, with the Japanese scientists in 2016 discovering a bug that lived on plastic trash mounds, which actually ate the material and disconnected the polymers. And one of the most common plastics that's used in making water bottles and clothing. So, John McGearan, he is the professor from the Center for Enzyme Innovation and at the University of Portsmouth. In 2018, he created a superior version of it in his lab completely by accident. but that sped up this time significantly. So now there was this another breakthrough that would come in April of this year from the University of Dalhousie, where an enzyme extracted from composting leaves in about 10 hours when heated to 70 degrees Celsius or 158 degrees Fahrenheit. A French company, Carbose, would take this technology and then lay the groundwork for a market application by 2024 to 2025. So stay tuned for more information on that. But they say our experiments show that they did indeed work better together. So we decided to try physically link them like two Pac-Men joined by a piece of string. So he said it took a great deal of work on both sides of the Atlantic, but it was worth the effort. And we were delighted to see that our new enzyme is up to 3 times faster than the naturally evolved separate enzymes, opening new avenues for further improvements. So improvements might include, adding further enzymes to the breakdown natural material as well as the plastics. So that's such as natural or artificial blended fabrics or takeaway drinking cups. So the plastic lining inside of which often prevents the rest of the cup from being recycled. So they're still working away on it, but it's so cool to be able to share with you a positive story during kind of their process as they continue to discover more and better our environment, so we can make sure we stop, that single use of plastic and make sure it's breaking down effectively. So that is all of the feel-good, positive stories that I have to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I love being here and being able to talk to you about just positive things going on in our world, because there is always positive things still going on, even with all of our craziness, chaos going on in our world right now. See, even the wildfires. I know that seemed like such a negative, daunting thing, but there is some beneficial things for our environment. So always try to look on the positive side, which is what I'm here to help you do. So I hope today's episode uplifted your day a little bit. Thank you so much for listening to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. I have so much fun being here, so please do not forget to hit that subscribe button. I have new episodes out every single Monday and Thursday. I also do post pictures on our social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I talk about the upcoming episodes. I give you notifications when there is a new episode out. So definitely head over there, like and follow us on social media. And please do not forget to leave a 5-star review. I love hearing your comments. I love hearing, maybe some random acts of kindness that you've received or that you've given. Would love just to hear some feedback or engage with you on our social media or over the reviews. So take just a few minutes out of your day to leave a 5-star review, because it would make my day. So thank you so much for being here. Stay happy, stay positive, and remember to spread kindness every single chance that you get. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.